What's up guys, Cornerd here. Today we're going to be looking at configuring a router using Server 2008. And as you can see here, I am running Server 2008 on top of Windows 8. No pun intended, obviously. So the deal with this is that I'm running it on a VMware, so it's a virtual machine. But you can do this on your own server as long as you obviously have two network ports connected to two switches that are on a different network. So the first thing you want to do is configure two of those switches that your computer will recognize on those different networks. And obviously on your switches you want to make sure everything's configured properly there. Make sure that no DHCP is enabled. Well, you don't necessarily have to. You can have it enabled, but basically make sure that obviously your routing settings on your switch is not configured, or if it is, make sure it's actually pointing to this router from VMnet 2 or switch 2 to switch 3. Just in this case, it's VMnet 2 to VMnet 3. So the first thing you want to do is you want to configure your network properties for each of the ports that it's going to be routing between. So the first port it's going to be routing between is my switch 2, or VMnet 2. So I need to make sure that I have an IP address, which is going to be my default gateway for switch 2 on that subnet. So I'm going to do 192.168.2.1. And default gateway you want to leave blank. DNS server you can have it on or you can have it off. It depends on your networking setup. Obviously, if you want the internet, you're going to need that on, but that's not what we're configuring here. So the other one you want to configure is the second network, and what it's telling me is that, let's just try that one more time, is that the other was open, so you have to close that. So now that I've got connection 2, I configure that for 192.168.3.1 because the other one was 2.1. In our default gateway, we want to leave blank here. Okay, so now that that's configured, we want to actually add the role of server. So we need to add the role for being able to add a router onto this. So in order to add a role, we just right-click on roles and go next. And we want to have a network policy and access services. That will allow you to configure a router as well as VPN. So once we hit next, we want to do routing and remote access services. And you want both of them checked because remote access services is nice for VPN. So we hit install. So it goes really, really quickly as far as installing. So while that's installing, we want to configure both of these machines, one on switch 2 and one on switch 3, to have an IP address. Now if you already have a DHCP server set up on Windows or on the switch itself, you don't have to worry about this, but in this case I'm going to statically configure a IP address for this. So I'm going to do 192.168. Let's see, this is .2.101. And then another thing to note here is that you need to do that default gateway. You need to do the IP of, whoops, not that one. You want to do the IP of the network connection that you've set up for here, because this is going to be your default gateway. So make sure that if you have a computer that is statically configured through DHCP, dynamically configured through DHCP or manual, you have to make sure that you have your default gateway, which is your router address, on here. So this is .2.1 for this network, and like it has two network connections for .3 would be XP right. So again, 2.1 is your default. You hit OK, and you go ahead and you do another static IP address. So this one's in the .3 network, so we're going to do .3. Let's do 102 just for argument's sake, and we need the default gateway to be 192.168.3.1 because that's what we configured there. Again, make sure if you're using VMware that you're on VMnet 2 and VMnet 3. This is VMnet 3. So now that we have this configured, you would think, okay, well I'm going to go ahead and ping 192.168.3.1 thinking that the router will actually be able to already take care of this for you, and the answer to this is an obvious no. So the reason why it's obvious is because all you've done is you've added your service. You need to be able to add the actual components to this service. So what I'm going to do is to this role I should say, I'm going to go into the server manager and go under network policy and access services. what I need to do is I need to configure routing and remote access because it hasn't been configured. So therefore, having my default gateways does absolutely nothing. So click on that and say configure enable routing and remote access. It guides you through the steps right here, but you want to actually click on custom. And then you want to click on LAN routing or any of these that you want to set up. So we're going to click on finish. Now it's going to say start the service. So it's actually adding the service onto the role is really what is the proper vocabulary for this. So it's adding the LAN routing service on to this network policy and account services role. So now that that's there, if I go back in here, as you can see, it ping request timed out. If I do ping 192.168.3.1 again, you'll get a reply. And the same goes true for if I go ahead and say under command prompt ping 192.168.2.1, I will have a reply there, which also means that in between I can also ping 192.168.3.102, which is the IP we set, and the same is concerned for pinging on a different network 192.168.2.101. As you can see, by setting up a simple little router here, you have already communicated between both of these networks, .2 and .3. This is a pretty easy thing to do as far as routers are concerned. The next video I will be talking about how to set up a DHCP relay, which means that if you have a DHCP server setting up your clients to give IP addresses, you can actually set up your DHCP server to pass out an IP address on a completely different subnet using the DHCP relay service, which is really, really cool. And this is very handy, especially if you want to be able to have less problems on your network, if you want to consolidate things and make things a little bit easier as far as the amount of load on your network. This is a really cool way to do it. There are some other things on the router as well that you could get into further, but this is really just a simple video, as you saw, about setting up a DHCP server. So make sure you check all your settings to make sure everything's correct. I did this pretty quickly, but again, it took some time because sometimes you make stupid mistakes. Make sure you're connected to the right switch, make sure everything's properly configured, and you'll be good to go. Also, I suggest using Wireshark to monitor to see, okay, if I send a ping out, is it going to ping the router first, or is it going to ping, send out a broadcast and only send out a broadcast to that one area of your network and not hit the router. So make sure you check that out. It's really worth seeing, but that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching this video. I will definitely be making more videos on this stuff, so if you're interested, give this video a thumbs up and definitely comment and subscribe. I will be doing more videos like this in the future and more tech and cool stuff coming up. So thank you guys again for watching this video, and definitely stay tuned.